Welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's Daybreak on Trust Television. It's that time of the program where we take a deep dive into a conversation segment. And this morning, we'll be looking at insecurity. And worried by the spate of insecurity across the country, the PDP Governors Forum has called on the federal government to consider decentralization of the security apparatus of the country by creating state police. Highlighting the lamentations of the current security structure and the importance of engaging local communities, the governors stressed the need for the decentralization of security apparatus so that states can enhance good governance by having good state police. This forms the thrust for our conversation today, as we also look at the approach of the state government in addressing rising cost of living, which Nigerians are facing. We have a renowned security expert, an avid writer, and a researcher on security matters and conflict resolution, retired Brigadier General John Temlong Verzum from Jos, the Plateau State capital, this morning. General John Temlong, while in the military, was the commander in charge of the multinational Joint Task Force in Baga. Good morning, General.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I hope you are doing well too.
I'm good, thank you. Are you?
Very well, thank you. This morning, the last couple of weeks or months, if you like, with various incidences across the country, we have seen a renewed call, by the governors on the need to decentralize the Nigerian security apparatus. The need to specifically, evolve a structure that would allow the state to put up a state police, one that they think would respond to some of the security challenge we see today quicker and faster, and try to nip some of the crises in the bud, before it escalates. What are your initial thoughts about this renewed call, for decentralizing the Nigerian security apparatus?
Well, thank you very much. That is, on the face value, is appealing. But I'll be frank with you, it's a call to anarchy. People should ask the question, there were regional police before, there were native authority police before. What happened that they were reverted into a single federal police? It's because this generation do not read and are not aware and not conversant with history. Going into independence, there were complaints by the minority groups in this country to Her Majesty's government on their fears that once there is independence, the suppression and operation by the regional and native authority police is going to have an adverse effect on them. As a result of that, Her Majesty's government set up the Sir Henry Willings Commission in 1957. And by 1958, when Sir Henry Willings Commission turned in a report, it recommended that the police force should be centralized. But that in the report, it stated that the execution should be decentralized as it is now, which they are doing, where you have in each state, you have commissioners, you have in local governments and the rest, and that the regions should bear part of the burden for the funding of the police, because after all, the regions, the police are providing security for them. That was before the states were created. I remember this report, when it was submitted, there was, the regions didn't want to implement it. But the 1966 coup, then it was implemented, and a centralization and the abrogation of the native authority police and the regional police and a centralized police.
Okay.
They were effective then, And so if we are asking why are they not effective now, it is for us not to look at a simplistic solution to the problem, which we think it is, by creating other organs and increasing bureaucracy and the costs of governance. Instead, we should interrogate what are the problems, what are the fundamental issues that this hitherto effective police force is no more effective. And I think that should go at the root of the whole problem, that we should look at it and interrogate it and see how we can now correct some of those places, things we do. And part of the example is, look, the population of Nigeria has grown tremendously and in quantum force from 1966 to now in 2024 to about 220 million. Now, how do you want a police force that is less than 1 million to police 220 million? For goodness sake, let's look at it. Even going by the UN standard of 4,000 to 1 or 400 to 1, what's the ratio that we have now? 2, what are the working conditions of these people whom you call the police? And 3, we have not been able to come out and get the police force to be a truly Nigerian police, because the colonial hangover is still there. You see, during the colonial period, they wanted to separate the police from the citizens and use them to oppress the citizens. And so what they did was to build barracks for policemen like they built for the military. Yet if you go to their countries, there are no police barracks because it is a civil police force. They live with the people that they are policing. Till today, we have carried that hangover and keeping policemen who are supposed to be even on and off duty, be observing what is going on in their environments and seeing who are the criminals, the criminal elements, and nip them, because policing involves prevention, crime prevention and detection. Not what we are doing, we are reacting now, fighting. The major work of policing is to prevent and detect crime so that you nip it at the bud.
All right.
So that colonial hangover is still there.
Okay, if I may, General.
All you need is barracks for the kinetic arm of the police, which is the mobile police force. And that's the force between the regular police and the armed forces. They are the ones who are supposed to be quartered, who are supposed to be readily available to be used. And once it is overwhelming to them, the process as is going on, the armed forces is invited to come in and provide military aid to civil authority.
All right, General.
Now, what you have done is that you have alienated the police.
A number of issues that I think we can take time to further drill down on. The Billings reports, which was made available to Her Majesty, was in 1957, as you rightly captured, some 65 years ago. Since that time, we have evolved, whether in terms of populations, we have not become. I mean, even the regional governments have all been phased out. We now have states and local governments. That's if the local governments exist in the real sense of the word. But my point exactly is that with all of these evolutions that have happened, and with some of the practices we have seen in places like the United States, from where we borrowed some of these practices, is it completely out of place to have a conversation around having a policing system that is closer to the people, that is from within the people, that can increase response time? Do you think the opportunity to modify the existing structures, the opportunity exists to modify the existing structures to serve these needs, or is it completely displaced to have that conversation?
Example, I tell them that we should look at it from the evolution of the United States itself. The federal system in the United States was formed by the states. It was the states that came together to form a center, and gave them some of their powers. The states had their armed forces, they had their police before they came together to form the United States of America. And so what they did was that once they relieved some of the authorities' powers to the center, they held back some of them. And one of those things that they held back is their national guards. So, which is different from the police, because what you are asking for, the threat we are facing today, the police, even the federal police cannot face it. It is the armed forces that has come in. So even if you talk of a state police, as it were, the state police, unless you say a state armed forces or a state national guard, as it is obtained in America, but then the national guard in America too has a system that is linked up with the federal government, and their training and equipment is done by the federal, who make sure that they train in line with the doctrine of the United States Armed Forces, because they can be employed and deployed even outside continental United States now. But before, they were not deployed within the continental United States. But now back to your question, that we can actually tinker with what it is and make it look more responsive. One, look at the example of the judiciary. Even though you have a state judiciary, the chief judge, but there is a National Judicial Council that appoints and disciplines judges. So what you could do is that you could decentralize the police force to that extent and take that model and have the Police Service Commission being responsible for the appointment and discipline of certain category of officers in the police force, like in the judiciary. Then the lower ones could be left at the state level. That way you can be able to have a control like what is happening in the judiciary. The other aspect is that the governors themselves were the ones who gave out their powers to the federal, because the police council is formed up of the state governors and the president. Even the appointment of the IG is supposed to be done by them. But I have not seen of recent where they sat down and recommended an IG and said on agreement and the rest. They left out their powers to the president to the extent that the police is wholly controlled by the federal, because that section of the Constitution and the Police Act envisages there's this sort of problems and said let there be a dual mandate between the states and the federation in respect to the appointment of the Inspector General of Police, and probably some of the doctrines and what is happening, because there should be able to be accountability of the IG to them. So I think they have just relinquished everything. They should go back and study the Constitution well, make sure they get back what they want, and not release their powers completely to the federal government as regards the control in terms of appointment of the IG and the rest. So that way they can be able to. But if you look at the model of what is happening in the judiciary and you tinker it down to the police, yes, they can have. But in any case, the police men or the police commissioners in the states are members of the State Security Council. And I think decisions should be taken in council, the governor in council with the Security Council. And once those decisions are taken and instructions given that certain things should be done, it should be done. But I'll tell you, there are problems there again, because some political problems which the governors have, they want to use force against their opponents to achieve. And that is not professional for the police or the armed forces to do, because those are areas that soft power should work, not hard power. And because they are afraid of elections, saying that, look, they will be seen as being hard, they want votes, that some of these people are their own people. It comes in, politics come into national security issues, and this kills the whole country. We should not politicize national security. Let's call a spade by a spade, whether you are the governor's brother or his best supporter or the chairman of his party. If you are a criminal, you should be treated as a criminal. Simple.
Okay.
General, just to come in here, I mean, I think there's a consensus across the country that the policing model we have right now is antiquated one way or another. It is not fit for purpose, and that's the only reason why we're even talking about the security challenges or the security crisis that we're having to deal with. And if you take a look, if you take a survey across the world, you realize that decentralization is pretty much what most countries are adopting to address their own security challenges, one that is not too peculiar to the situation we're faced with right now. And one of the obvious things that also stand out from the current structure is that the current policing structure was pretty much made in the image of the Nigerian military, because the military had a greater say in shaping the security architecture, whether during their era or the two former military generals that we had as presidents, President Obasanjo back in the early 2000s, and President Muhammadu Buhari, who just left office a couple of months ago. I mean, for most Nigerians, it doesn't make sense for us to keep repeating the same thing and expect a different result. Because while there are issues around funding, the manpower, as you did talk about, the governors who are supposed to be quote-unquote chief security officers have very little or no say whatsoever in regards to the operational modalities with regards to the Nigerian police. Hence, the need for them to really renew this call again for us to have some sort of state structure that allows states to really fund their own police and also take responsibility, because we've seen some results with the likes of Amotekun, with all the other state structures, vigilante groups that have been operating to mitigate some of the gaps created by our state police. Don't you think that this is a risk worth taking? Because I remember from the beginning of the analysis, you do was anarchy. And I don't think that's what they have in America. That's not what they have in the UK, where the systems are decentralized.
It makes me laugh when some of you start asking some of these questions and start talking about the military. The military handed over 24 years ago or so, 20 how many years? Now you are still talking about the military being in charge or being modeled about that. You mean it will take us another 50 years to be able to do what we want to do and do what we think the military did? I don't think so. I think if we want to hold our future in our hands and look at what we want to do, then we must stop this blame game. We must start looking at it. In fact, you came in to solve a problem. You offered yourself to be elected to solve a problem. And what is the problem? It means you don't even understand the problem in the first place, or you are just being attracted by the glamour of office. For goodness sake, let's stop this blame game. Is that we have not been able to sit down and even understand the narrative itself. How do a governor wants to be an operational commander? Is the president even the operational commander of the armed forces? Is the commander-in-chief? He's not. His powers have been delegated. The Constitution gives him that to an officer of the armed forces. The Armed Forces Act does the same thing too. Look, they are supposed to provide direction. Now, when you talk of models, and I gave you the example of the American state, in Nigeria, it is the center that created the states. In America, it's the states that created the center. So you can't compare those two. But then, going down further, when you look at the operations of those vigilantes or Ametekun, who are they accountable to? Is there any accountability? If you know what they are doing in those areas, the human rights abuses that are going on, you will not. You will rather say, okay, you are seeing some results here, but what goes in behind is this thing. But then, what stops the police itself? Like I said, you are now this. You tell us everybody says security is everybody's business, but what is your own responsibility as to that security? Do you know what you are supposed to do? What are the citizens supposed to do? Just to sit down and wait for the police or the DSS or the armed forces to secure them? What are they supposed to do as citizens to secure themselves? I mean, they have a role. The problem is that the governors themselves have not been able to domesticate some of these national security documents and be able to teach and build the capacity of their citizens as to their responsibility as to national security. If you take the defense policy, for instance, it is a citizen-centric policy which specifies the rules of the citizens in defense. Now they cannot, you sit here, cannot sit down and tell me what your roles are until somebody builds your capacity. And this is supposed to be done even in schools, including the syllabus, so that those who are within as bad citizens, we report them. When we entered primary school, it was during the British period. I entered primary school in 1960, January, before the independence in October. Now, at that time, we had what was called civics education. And we were taught and told that a policeman's crown was not supposed to touch the ground because that was the Queen's crown. And so a single policeman will go to a village to arrest a criminal. And once he gets in there, once he blows his whistle, the whole citizens will assist him to arrest that criminal. Because the citizens were built and taught to do that and respect the police. Today, citizens don't even know their rights as a citizen's arrests. Citizens are, even though if the policemen have lost their respect, but the citizens must give them back and make sure and make them to behave. So citizens are not even performing their own roles. Citizens see thieves sitting down in their environment, buying drinks, living questionable life, and praising them because they are getting from them. Okay. Citizens must wake up and take back their countries. It is not you and me that will take back or the government. We must take back our country from criminals, and let's stop deceiving ourselves. Right. You can bring 1 million, 2 million, 3 million policemen. Right. If the citizens don't want to take back their country from criminals, we are wasting our time.
General, I mean, the whole idea, one measure of leadership or the government is for its ability to provide security, because that's why we surrender our sovereignty to the Federal Republic of Nigeria as citizens, because the government is supposed to guarantee that security. Yes, we do have our responsibilities and roles, but of course the greater responsibility of providing security lies with the government, because it does control armament and things like that. So I want to get your take on some of the ideas that people have been putting forward regarding what needs to be done. This past week, we've heard from the governor of Katsina, who said, listen, citizens should stop solely relying on the government to protect them, because the government doesn't have the ability or the capacity to do that, which begs the question, and then what is the point of having the government? Plus, you talk about, you know, some of these criminals in our society. There are those criminals who, to be fair, you know, are not so obvious. And then there are the ones who are obvious, but the citizens are not equipped to do anything about it. How can you effect a citizen's arrest, you know, when a bandit is armed with an AK-47 or AK-49? How do you do that? I mean, even the police sometimes are overpowered in terms of armament when they face some of these bandits. So realistically speaking, give me a sense of what we can do to correct the gaps or to address the gaps within the system, because you clearly are not in support of creating any sort of structure outside of what we have right now. You think we can fix the system and then address it. With regards to the kinetic approach right now, we have the Nigerian army in deployment across the 36 states of the Federation, which they are not equipped to do, by the way, if we're going to be honest. That's the job of the police, but the police is incapable of doing it because we have come to understand that they've been overwhelmed. What do we do to fix the current system, in your view, that can give us value for not just money, but value for the essence of what government is supposed to represent?
Well, I quite appreciate the frustrations of the governor of Katsina State, but let me tell you, the funny thing is that if you can build capacity and capabilities, if you just give up and say, look, we don't have the capacity to do certain things, it means we have given up. But we must build the capacity and capabilities to deal with what is here and even go ahead of them. One, that's two. What you are saying is sometimes is born of the rhetorics that people still talk. Even if you have the police fully, even at the local level, what you are dealing with requires intelligence. And this intelligence, the information to be analyzed and processed into intelligence come from the citizens. They will never have enough intelligence personnel to deploy in every nook and cranny of this country. It is not rocket science. Even in those countries that you talk about, I will give you examples that they do. It is citizens that call 911 at every time. If you go to Britain, you see those old women and men sitting down on their balconies, taking sunlight in the afternoon, morning, afternoon, and evening. They are providing security for this environment. They know everybody on that street. They see, if they see anything that is suspicious, they call 911 before you even know. You will see policemen come and apprehend somebody who is roaming around the street and the rest, and they pick them. If you go to the shopping mall, you see them all over. Those old people, they move around sometimes the whole day. They just pick, they don't buy anything. They come and sit down and buy the coffee or tea and drink and the rest. If you go to the USA, here's the same thing you call neighborhood watch. I had an experience. I didn't even know. We were sleeping with my family in the US, and that there were some black guys who were picketing our house. What our neighbor did, that was around 11, 12 in the night. Our neighbor called the police straight off and said, there is an international officer in so-so and so, 1106 North 11th, that he has seen some people suspiciously milling around his house. He didn't alert me. It wasn't the police that knew. Once he called the police, every 5 minutes a police vehicle was patrolling around my house. It was in the morning that he now tell us this story. Say he didn't want to disturb us and to make us fear. Now, going further is that we must, even if you decentralize the police, one, have you thought about the costs? Have you thought about how you're going to equip them? Are you going to equip them like the armed forces? Because you said even these terrorists, they come, they are more equipped than these people. Some states have not been paying salaries. Go and give a human being arms and ammunition and don't pay him salary, and he will not sit down in that studio to talk to me today, because he will turn the weapons against you. Some primary schools today, in some schools, have not been paid. Some are on strike. The responsibility of keeping people whom you give arms is such enormous that you must not tinker with it anyhow. But coming to the bandits, these bandits, some of them live within us. Some of them enjoy facilities within us. It is for us to engage a holistic, what we are doing is we are trying to look at a sectoral approach. We will never solve it. We have to look at a holistic approach to all these things. Now, I gave you the examples about USA and UK now. Now come to Nigeria. If not, in some areas within the same, in Kaduna there, if you go to Rigasa area and the rest, how are those buildings built? If not for the old city of Kaduna, that's the GRA area that is well planned. The Max Lux plan that planned it. You have streets, you have numbers and the rest, even though it has been distorted here and there. But do you have streets? Do you have numbers on those streets? Do you know who live in each street? These are the national security infrastructure that you must put in place. All our cities are being built like slums, and slums are veritable areas for criminals to live in. People convert residential areas into hotels, hotels that are not even registered, hotels that these hoodlums sit down there, from there, they plan their operation and go and kidnap people. And even when they kidnap, they move them to houses within the city there and sit down. One of the persons who was kidnapped in Kaduna there, a friend of mine, was taken into a house within Kaduna, and even Channels TV was on. And when Channels TV announced it as breaking news that this person has been kidnapped, the kidnapper say, Oga, you're a big man, so your value is going to be high. So we have left a whole loose system that is a very ripe and veritable environment for criminals to operate in.
Right.
All right.
We have left town planning to this thing. So there are no. In fact, if you call policemen now and say, okay, there is an attack going on in your house, you have to spend minutes trying to describe your place to them in the night. For goodness sake, is that how you want to provide security for your people? Is that the work of policemen, or that the work of the state governor?
All right.
How are you going to do that? Google Maps should have taken
listening
him.
to you, and of
again,
course, recalling some of the conversations that we have had with critical stakeholders as far as this issue is concerned, gives us a sense of fear. My co-anchor would agree with me, because it does appear that each of the stakeholders we have spoken to, whether be it the governors or those at the hierarchy of the Nigerian police, or people like yourself, veterans in this whole struggle, who are retired but clearly still have their faculties intact, it doesn't appear that we have found a nexus to share ideas. We don't seem to be talking to each other. The governors seem to be talking in silos, about what needs to be done from their own perspective and how they understand it. When we speak to the military or police hierarchy, they have a completely different ideas about what needs to be done. Does it appear to you, given your privileged position, that we are doing enough to sit down and and bring all of this into a melting point and begin to think of what we can do, short, medium, and long term? Because clearly there are concerns from every sphere about how what the state governors are canvassing for can be mismanaged. The state governments are also worried that it doesn't appear that the system trusts them sufficiently enough to take care of it, even though it has the mandate of the people, to provide those services. Are we talking to each other enough? Do you think there is some kind of conversation that we need to have where we can harness some of the finest ideas and begin to put machinery in place to improve security at the grassroots or at the state level?
Unfortunately, we're not having a conversation that we should have, so that there should be an elite consensus. And it's so unfortunate that, you see, some of our recommendations, even as far back as 2000, was that when you elect governors, you build their capacity as to what the whole national security system is all about. The national security decision-making system, the national security infrastructure, and how they fit into it as state security officers, and what their roles are and what is expected of them. Now, you go and carry somebody, a businessman today, and you come and put him a governor. You carry a civil servant, you come and put him a governor. You carry a practicing lawyer, a practicing doctor, and the rest, and you put him a governor. The next minute, you expect him to have an understanding of a national security system that people go through to be trained to be professionals, and then you want him to do it. You see, it's not done that way. We said they should be able to subject themselves to some training, because, you see, if you look at the American system that we are providing, there is supposed to be a transition period. And that transition period, there is money made available, is budgeted for. There's a transition act, a law, which knows that if we are going into election this year, or like in America, they are going into election sometimes this year. Now, from November, when they elect a president, until they swear in this thing, money is appropriated. That these staff undergo training as to what they want, and looking at their programs and the rest, and how is the national security, how are they going to fit into it. So, you see, there has to be some capacity building, even for the state chief executives, I'm afraid, because you need that. If you're being in an office that not arrogate and give you the capacity to run that office the way you want to run it, no. Secondly, We need to look at this thing. I said we must address this thing holistically. Even if you come and give them state police today, the state police are going to operate in an environment. What are those infrastructure that are already on ground that will assist them in achieving security? They are not there. So they must build them, because there is nowhere that you live in slums and expect to provide security in slums like that. They are doing even city renewals abroad, because they are envisaging that in the next 10, 15 years, you are going to have cars that are driverless, which will move from point A to B. You program them. So you are building your cities to accommodate them. We have not even built our cities to accommodate security concerns, emergency concerns. I have seen a house that has been burnt and people died in it because the fire service, the fire engine could not access that house. That is not done anywhere, but it is in a city. So if you do not take care, look, let's not look, I'm telling you, I think our conversation should not be fragmented, should not be compartmentalized. Let's look at a holistic solution to these problems. If not, we are deceiving ourselves. I'm telling you, we must look at a holistic solution to this problem, because if you start compartmentalizing security concerns and dealing with security in silos, you are wasting your time, because those criminals are ahead of you. Once you are solving this aspect, they are already ahead of you on another aspect. So you must get it holistic. Let's have that conversation and let's agree that we have problems. If you don't understand the narrative and the problems, we are only wasting our time.
General.
It's like when you have the symbols, look, the symptoms for typhoid is fever. The symptom for malaria is fever. Now, if you are treating malaria while you have typhoid fever, your intestines will be perforated. Let us understand the whole situation and treat it holistically.
General.
If you have both malaria and typhoid, you treat both at the same time.
Right. General.
Okay? But if you treat one and leave one, you'll be left with another one to start dealing with. At that time, it would have gone bad.
Right. General, it's safe to say that so far, the argument does not support for a continuation of what we have right now. Nigerians are not only dissatisfied with the results, Nigerians are frustrated with the performance of not just the police, but also the Nigerian military. Because at the end of the day, people want to just go about their normal businesses. They want to be able to go to their farms. They want to be able to go to church. They want to be able to go, their children to go to school. They want to be able to go to the mosque. They want to be able to go to the markets and live their lives normally with peace and security. So far, that has not been guaranteed for the better part of at least a decade and a half. So, that being said, it is also very clear that if we're practicing true federalism, we're supposed to, the states, the subnationals, are supposed to have some sense of, considerable control over not just resources, but also the governance structure. And we've seen so many acts that have been passed over the past few years to suggest that we're now devolving more powers because the center is just too strong, and that strength has not been utilized to deliver on whether it's infrastructure, on education, on healthcare, on security, even the economy. We're quite struggling on all of these fronts, and that's because the power has been concentrated significantly at the center for the most part of our current democratic dispensation, and to no avail, so to say, as far as the results are concerned. In talking about the unknowns, we don't know that if we have a state police, say in the next few years, that things are not going to get better. We don't know that for a fact, in the same way that we don't know whether it's going to worsen the situation. But isn't this risk worth taking? I know you have your own opinions about it, of not necessarily being a solution. But wouldn't you say that since this argument has been pushed forward for quite some time, and we understand that the National Assembly is even putting together a framework to consider a structure like the state police, that it's about time that we try something else other than what we have been doing for all these years?
Why are you shying away from the holistic approach that I'm talking to you, and you are just going to one aspect? Don't shy away from it, because even if you have made up your mind about that, that is the problem that we're having. Open our hearts. Let's open our minds to ideas that there are problems. And these problems, we are pushing them. Let's face them straight on and confront them. If we don't confront these problems and keep shying and saying center is this, is it the center that is making your local governments not to function? Because we said it here at the beginning. Is it the center that is stopping us from educating our children? For goodness sake, education is not on the exclusive list. Yet, we had the federal government going to build primary schools for us for Almajiris. What are we talking about? Let's face these problems and confront them headlong. Let's stop being fixated on one aspect. I told you, if you do that, you have not solved the problem at all. You are hitting the Lord, you are not touching the donkey. Let's go to the donkey and deal with these problems. Is it the center that will farm for us, that will bring out our great policies for us? Then in our states, go and look at our constitution. People who sit down and talk, is there any difference? In fact, somebody, I was reading an article, it said, if you look at even the 63 constitution and the 79 and then these ones, they are just tinkering a little bit of these things, because they are about the same, keep this thing. But is it the center that will provide the input that we need? Today, is it the center that has stopped us from buying grains at good prices from our farmers, that will go to the federal government to have a reserve, to release grains from the federal reserve? What do the states have their own reserve? Do the local government have their own reserve? Is it a center that will make us have thinking about the welfare of our citizens, about the security of our citizens? We must hold everybody accountable. Let's stop pushing the buck. We are not even doing it. Our schools are just, our hospitals are nothing to write home about. We sit down and say center. And I'm afraid when you talk about the military not giving you what it is, I'm not defending the military, but the military, like I told you, will rely on information from the citizens. What you are dealing with is a population-centric. Asymmetric warfare is a citizen-centric warfare. They don't operate in isolation. They operate within you and me. They wear the same thing. They are our relations. The people who killed the monarch in Kwara, the general that was killed, they came and sat down in a bar in that place and drank and planned how to go. At the end of the day, it was the barman who saw them as very good customers. They asked him, why is the Oba's house, the chief's house, palace? He led them to the palace of the chief. And today is history. He is history. Is it the military or the police that will do that? Citizens are willfully providing intelligence information to people without even knowing, because we have even failed to do that and carry them along. So when you look, let's confront these problems head on. What I'm afraid and what I've been telling Nigerians is that there are problems. Let's sit down, analyze our problems, and see how we can confront them head on. Let's stop this blame game. Blame game will not bring you anybody. Will not stop solution for you. Will not bring solutions for you. We have problems, and everybody must accept responsibility. In any case, why did you offer yourself for position of authority and responsibility? Because you think you want to. You went and told people that you are going to do this, do this. You are not doing it. You are blaming others. For goodness sake, I think I appreciate President Tinubu for saying one thing. He asked for the job. Don't pity me because he feels that he can solve it.
All right.
And so we shouldn't be pushing the buck onto all.
All right, General, as we wind down this conversation, I would like to stir the honest net, which is you have rightly alluded to the fact that there is the need to sit down and talk to each other. How do you think this whole process should proceed from here? Is it a National Assembly-led conversation? Do you think those are the aim of affairs, and in this case, the security chiefs should be the one who should initiate, this conversation in such a way that we build trust within the systems and eliminate this mutual suspicion about who is in charge of what and how we can get results collectively? Where do you think, who do you think should be at the forefront of putting these conversations together so that we can begin to harness ideas and positions and then work together to achieve results?
Thank you. This is now, you are now asking questions that you see we should be looking at solutions. Now, you see, the Constitution gives the National Assembly its own role, because in the wisdom of the crafters of the Constitution, they believe you do not give so much powers to the center or to the governors or to the presidents without holding some. And that's why they appropriate, they hold the purse. Now, at their own level, they need to have their own conversation. One. At the level of the executives, I told you what my course at the National War College, now National Defense College, in 2000 recommended. 2001, when we graduated, that state governors, when we finish our crisis game, should be exposed to this crisis game like this, because they should know how crises go on. The governors can have their own conversation. Okay? At the national level, there is already a national security. The structures are there, the infrastructure are there at the national level. There is the national security staff. The armed forces are there, the police are there. And then they have these institutions, the National Defense College, the NIPS, and all these other colleges of the other district. For me, the Alumni Association of the National Defense College, where I was a president before, we do carry out these conversations every year. And we invite some of them and they don't attend. In fact, we have had a security seminar talking about ungoverned spaces in this country and what should be done and what it should be done. The papers are there. We forwarded the recommendations to the government, and it's left for the government to do that. For instance, I'll tell you, when we look at those ungoverned spaces, the forests you are talking about today, we called those who are the forest this thing, and they told us that, look, the forest guards and rangers that they had are old, some are dead, some is their children who are remaining there. There is no scheme of service. You don't even have numbers. You see, everybody sits down and believes that the armed forces can do magic or the police. No. This security architecture is designed in such a way that there are sources of information or intelligence that come in right from the bottom up. Those rangers and forest guards are supposed to provide certain information when they see strange movement of people or even footmarks of people and animals that are not even there before. The rangers should know the footmarks of all the animals in those areas. And when they see a strange one, they should start making a report and something should be done to trail. Now, these sort of things are not even there. It's after our report that some reorganization was being done in that report. But up to now, you need more people as forest guards, rangers, and the rest in the vast swaths of forest areas that we have in this country. Two, we need to look at how, after these various interactions at those areas, thank God, there is a Northern Governors Forum, there is the Nigerian Governors Forum. You can compartmentalize it because the threat in the north might not be the same with the threat in the south. So the Northern Governors Forum can sit down and get security experts to come out, and then we brainstorm for some days. Along with them, they should close their offices during that period, because this is the most important thing. And let's look at this thing holistically, because these minor things that they're looking at as town planning are very central to security and even to emergency services. People, hotels are springing everywhere. In those days, there used to be on and off licenses. Look, the British left an infrastructure on ground that catered for security, and we came and ravished it. You see, on and off license is where you can buy and buy drink and drink. Off license, you only sell. You don't allow anybody to sit down there and drink. Today, if you ask these young men today who are in government, who are enforcing regulation, they don't know what on and off license is. And during that time, a child that is below 17 cannot be sent to buy alcohol by parents. They will not sell it, because if they do, they will catch the person selling and buying. Today, they are all over. Today, they sell drugs on road, and there's a nexus between drugs and criminality. And so what are we, is it the security or citizens? We look at it, we see them. People steal all over. So I think we need a conversation below that. Even at the local government levels, we need conversations. And I tell you, Nigeria is so much blessed with human resources that we are not using. There are so many of us that are retired, that are living in our communities, that are living in rural areas, that the local government can use to sit down and harmonize and galvanize and use them to provide. In fact, before you start this conversation, they can start security awareness training for the communities at all levels and have their own mode of passing information. By my tribe, the Taro tribe, before the advent of these security stakes we are talking about, we had what we call Ngapa, like a beagle call. Once you blow it, we know it's for danger, for war, for mobilization. There are many, and once they blow in one village, the next village blows. That's the relay. Right. We have had our survival motives before. Everybody was defending himself. Today, you are just sitting down and expect this thing. Are we even passing information to ourselves, to our communities? People will run out and leave their communities. Look, if you read the Bible, David killed Goliath with a stone, with a sling. Goliath was in an armored vehicle. What the equivalent of a tank today. David was standing. Those AK-47, people with bow and arrow in their own community, and the rest can kill them with bow and arrow. All right, people can kill them with spears. People, they come even sometimes in the night. People can kill them with even sticks. General. Then guns are allowed. There are hunters. I used hunters when I was a commander in NASA in 23 Armored Brigade, whom I organized and gave them, and they were giving me information as to the movement of bandits. All right. And I wiped them off. All right, General. So I think there are so many things that can be done at the local, state, and federal level. Let's start the conversation and move forward. But not just the conversation. There are those things we can start doing at our level now. In fact, I tell you, during the Civil War, the chief people went in with bows and arrows. And if you ask those who are there, the Igbos feared the bow and arrow more than the weapons, because you won't even hear where it is coming from. There's no sound. The next thing, you are hit, and they are poisons. Thank you very much. Look, let's take back our country from criminals. Thank you very much, stop the blame game. I'm sorry, we may have to anchor the conversation at this point for want of time. I want to thank you very much for finding time to join us this morning and to share your very insightful thoughts as far as the issue of security and protection of property and lives are concerned in Nigeria. We will continue to circle around these conversations as we go on in the coming days until we are able to find a solution, something that works for us, both at the grassroots, at the state, and at the national level. Once again, thank you very much for finding time to join us this morning. It's always my pleasure. Let us take back our country from criminals. The criminals could be in government. The criminals could be on our streets. The criminals could be the bandits. We must take back our country from criminals. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much for that, Church. We've been talking with General John Temlong. General John Temlong was the former commander in charge of the Multinational Joint Task Force in Baga. We'll take a quick breather. When we return, the show continues. Please don't go away.